Ed here with a Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share an update on my experience with the Lenovo YOGA C940. This is the 15-inch model in iron gray, and I'll remind everyone that even though this looks nearly identical to its smaller 14-inch sibling that I reviewed at the end of 2019, its internals make this a remarkably different machine. This is a much more powerful device. In fact, it's aimed squarely at being a desktop replacement. So we've got a 15.6-inch Full HD touchscreen. You can go with the UHD option, but expect battery life to drop from what I've been experiencing here with this build, roughly 9 hours, down to less than half of that. And that's just me giving an estimate. We've got an Intel 9th Gen Core i7 9750H processor complemented by 16 gigs of RAM. By the way, the RAM is soldered on. You cannot upgrade that, so bear that in mind when making your purchase. 0.5 terabyte NVMe. The drive has performed very well. It's not the fastest drive on the market, but it's close enough. We've got an NVIDIA GTX 1650 with Max Q design, 4 gigs of dedicated RAM. That means you can game and also all of your editing, 4K video, Photoshop. It will just be better than what you would get on a standard Ultrabook. It's not going to be top of the line in terms of desktop replacement. This isn't a razor blade. It's not, a gaming and multimedia dynamo, but I would argue that it is beyond competent. I mean, this is, in my opinion, one of the best, at least through my experience so far, 4.4 pound 2-in-1s ever made. Remember, it is a 2-in-1, and that is even more impressive to me. In terms of the keyboard, it's good. It's not amazing. It's not my favorite keyboard. I'm glad we have a numerical keypad. That's definitely a bright spot. Wi-Fi 6 on board, Bluetooth 5.0. These are all the things you expect. And the fact that the display happens to be HDR certified is an extra bonus. I personally would probably go with the 4K model. After all, those of you that follow my channel already know I'm going with the 4K model on smaller machines. So it would make sense. I think I already have one open here. It would make sense that I would choose 4K on a larger machine with much more horsepower than something like my HP Spectre X360 13T that I presently use as my daily driver, which does have an Intel 10th Gen CPU, but of course no dedicated graphics on board. We do have Thunderbolt 3 ports on this, no micro SD card slot or full-size SD card slot. I wish there was one. This is not a perfect machine, but boy is it close. And the audio performance from that Lenovo soundbar hinge is top-notch. Let's take a listen. If this plays. Now, this is playing back in 4K, even though I have a full HD display here. I'm doing that just to show you all that buffering is nearly nil, and the audio performance is just fantastic. Screen brightness is maxed out, by the way, for those of you that are wondering. And even though I've been saying that I would personally prefer the UHD version of this, I'm not sure, and this is the first time I'm saying this, that the battery hit would be worthwhile. And I say that because I don't see myself wanting to game directly on this display, even though I have done that. And if I was hooking this up to an external monitor, it would no longer matter that I don't have 4K here. Now, it would matter for reviewing content for the channel, but since there is no micro SD card slot, that means now I'm going to have to bring along a card reader, and that just kind of gets out of hand. It's not a game breaker, don't misunderstand me. One thing I didn't mention, Windows Hello, we have a fingerprint scanner here on the right side. The webcam top center does not have Windows Hello capability, no IR camera. We do have a kill switch there that you can slide for privacy, which in the days of this pandemic and Zoom being completely compromised and everyone and their mother using it, it's a good thing that we've got at least the ability to switch that over and know that our camera is blocked. Certainly not unique to the 940 lineup, but good that it's there. Now, in terms of 2-in-1 performance, it's great. I mean, I love that the pen is docked and recharges itself just like the smaller 14-inch C940. And bear in mind, this is only 1.5 pounds heavier than the 13.9-inch model, and it is so much more powerful. So it's really a matter of what you're looking for. I personally, at the time of purchasing my HP, was looking for something a little bit more lightweight, but I was very much intrigued by this because, again, for that 1.5 pound difference, this thing is a powerhouse compared to an Ultrabook, but yet it still looks a lot like and nearly feels a lot like an Ultrabook. A little too heavy. If they got this down to under 4 pounds, which I'm sure the future holds for all of us, then we're in business, especially if battery life stays where it's at or gets better. I mean, I'm not going to say limitless expectations here because they are limited. But another good thing about this maturing a little bit is that at launch, this had bugs like any machine, but with the BIOS updates since its launch, which is now going on, like 5 months and change, 6 months, something around there, they have ironed out most problems. So if you're wondering how hot does this get, how loud does it get? Well, if you're gaming, then yes, it gets hot, it gets loud. But under pretty much any other tasks, normal content consumption like we were just, involved with, it's fairly good. I mean, it's not getting loud on me. It's not getting hot. But then again, I don't really put this on my lap too much because it is a fairly large machine. By the way, I do want to share with all of you some of what traditional audio performance is like, not music. So let me go to, let's jump back.
Hi, I'm Rex.
This makes sense. We'll look at the unboxing.
Hi, I'm Rex Moore with the Motley Fool in front of BMW's self-driving exhibit.
Here we go. I was considering it, especially in this color, by the way, which I do prefer, and it's not for everybody. I was considering this. We have a fingerprint scanner. That's why there's another color. Numerical pad, which I like. You should have that on a desktop replacement, no question about it. Construction is very good on this. Again, a mirror image of the 14-inch, but larger, slightly offset trackpad, but all the same in terms of performance. And the speakers, or I should say the speaker, the soundbar, is yet another element that differentiates this machine from everything. And boy, does it. I mean, in terms of, I love my HP, but I have to tell you now, I wish it had this audio. I wish every laptop had this audio. And when I look at competing products, there is nothing that directly competes with this. And I know you could tell me about HP's 2-in-1 lineup. They do have a 15.6-inch offering. However, they still have yet to launch, and it was supposed to come out this quarter, but of course, we're all living through a bit of hell here with the pandemic, but lucky to be around if you're healthy, and I hope all of you are. It's a horrible time. But that model with the now, what HP has made standard 90% screen to body ratio should have come out already. It should come out soon, but of course Lenovo already has it here. I mean, this is a fairly narrow bezel, and don't get me wrong, Dell, the XPS 17 is coming, and they are just making nicer and nicer machines. I used to be Mr. Dell, not literally, of course, but Dell was my favorite manufacturer. I've moved away, and that's because other companies like Lenovo, like HP, have really stepped up in ways that, frankly, I didn't feel they had in the past, and this is a very good example. So, normally I see Dolby Atmos branding, and I'm just like, everybody, I mean, HP's got Bang & Olufsen B&O branding, and the speakers on my 13T are awful. I mean, they're serviceable, but I would never want to watch a movie on it. This, I could watch a movie on, and again, considering the times we live in, that's a nice thing to have. Now, in terms of the 2-in-1, so pen jitters exist with this, but it is using a Wacom input in terms of you could get the pen of choice, and I do think that generally does a little bit better than N-Trig Solutions, but my fiance is the artist. She's the one who's given me feedback, and that's more important than me just doing note-taking. It is a little bit too big, in my opinion, to really use regularly in the tablet mode like this. I mean, I don't see that being a realistic application, although it's not bad to actually have this in tablet mode, and I can switch it over right now like that. For me, the preferred use for a 2-in-1 like this is just being able to go into the productivity mode like that, and this is one of my favorite features. And then the fact that the speaker has stayed here is, again, the killer feature of this 2-in-1 because the audio travels with your experience. It's not going to just stay in a fixed position. So it really does move with you, and I think that's one of the best features of the C940, both in the 14 and 15-inch models. The pen, I've mentioned. Let's bring it out. Performance with it is good. It's not a bad pen at all. Actually, I'm going to just show you around the machine. Should have done that at the top, but if you saw my unboxing or any of the other coverage over the not half a year, but close to that it's been out, you've already seen this. Power button with LED indicator, Type A USB port, the pen right there, which I'm going to pop out right now. It is a fairly small pen. I'm not really a fan of the form factor, but the fact that it recharges, the fact that it performs well is important. Left side of the machine, Thunderbolt 3 ports are, of course, there and ready to go. You can use these for anything you want, external GPU, data transfer, display, whatever it may be. You've got the bandwidth to do what you need. The headroom is there, and that's another thing that makes this machine great. I mean, not that you can't find this on Ultrabook 2-in-1s, you can, but this has a processor that complements it very nicely. And I do think Lenovo, I don't have a word yet on when they'll be launching 10th gen processors, but I see no reason that they wouldn't launch the 10th gen chips that Intel recently started, well, they launched and mentioned we're going into wide-scale production. I see no reason why this machine wouldn't get that upgrade, which would only make this better. Another Type A port, headphone jack, and that's pretty much it on this machine in terms of what you need to know and see. A lot of you ask me about whether or not you can one-hand open this, and you can, but I always recommend using a second hand. I know for some of you that's a game breaker, whether it's the way you're docking it to a machine or whatever. I don't really understand why, because I like to use two hands. That sounds weird, but that's it for me. So, thus far, the update, I think hopefully most of you understand. This thing can game. It's not a gaming laptop, but it certainly at medium settings can pretty much power anything with the 1650 with Max-Q design. But if you want a true gaming laptop, I do recommend you look at something else, something really in the, in the razor blade world is what I would say. And that's where you're going to find really what you want. Is there latency using the pen? Yes, there is. It isn't perfect, but it does fairly well. I think that Lenovo did a really good job with the C940, maturing the product line, the lineage changing. So we're all able to benefit from that. They've stuck to something that works and just improved upon it. I wish that the UHD model had the battery life this does, but again, I also wish this had an SD card reader of any form. And Lenovo, if you're listening, which since you sent me the machine for review, hopefully let's put a card reader on this thing. I know it's not the most popular thing, but if this had a card reader, it would be a much more complete wrapped up package to me. Because it is a media monster. Again, not a gaming machine. It's not a top-of-the-line powerhouse, but it's close enough that there's no reason a card reader wouldn't be on this. I mean, there's a card reader on the Samsung Chromebook that I'm reviewing. So let's see it here on something that, seems to be limitless in terms of what it can do for the most part. This isn't jitter-free on performance, so you have to have realistic expectations. If you really need something as an artist, none of the 2-in-1s are going to satisfy you. They're all going to be, somewhat of a step, nearly where you're trying to go. But I don't expect them to actually satisfy artists that, do this, are doing digital art for a living. Now, for note-taking, for sketching, it's perfectly fine. And you may want to get a different pen, and that's the biggest downside. So as much as I love the housed pen, and that is one of the other great things about the Yoga lineup, it comes at the expense of not being a normal size, and I do prefer a normal size pen. That's just me. That rounds out the update. You probably felt like this was a full review. That'll come soon. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.